when you experience chatter, you are fully immersed in the experience. And then the question is, well, how do you take a step back, so to speak? Lots of people think that meditation is the way to do that. You become this kind of great observer of your own experiences, and meditation can be really effective. The problem with meditation, for some people, not everyone, and I've meditated on and off my whole life, so this is not a critique, but what I'm going to say now is true of any tool. There are no one-size-fits-all solutions, and sometimes you need to be able to step back in the heat of the moment, right before you're going on stage, or when your kid is flipping out at the soccer field, or when your employee is being impossible. And you can't take a 20-minute time out to sit in the lotus position and repeat a mantra in all of those instances. And so there's a need for other kinds of tools. What are a couple of examples? One of my favorites, one that we've researched here, is distant self-talk. So what this involves doing is using your name to coach yourself through a problem. All right, Ethan, how are you going to manage this situation? As silly as that sounds, there's a great deal of science behind it. And the way it works is we know that it's much easier for us to give advice to other people than it is for us on their problems, than it is for us to often advise ourselves when we're struggling. I mean, this is one of those scenarios when I'm talking to 1,000 people, I say, have you ever been in a situation where a friend or a loved one comes to you with a problem that they're struggling with? They can't see the solution, they present it to you, and you can coach them through it. Every single hand goes up, right? That is a truism. Distant self-talk plays on this mechanism. If you think about when we use names and second person pronouns, words like you, we use those parts of speech when we think about and refer to other people. So when you use those parts of speech to weigh in on your own problems, it's automatically switching your perspective. It's putting you in this mode of how you would talk to someone else, like a good friend. And that makes it much easier for us to think objectively from a more distance perspective about our problem. So that's one super simple thing to do. Just to throw another one out there, even easier potentially, I call this my 2 a.m. chatter strategy. We don't know why that happens, why we randomly have thoughts that pop into our head in the middle of the night that cause us chatter, but we know it happens with some regularity. The tool that I use in those instances, because it can happen to me as just like anyone else, is I do something called temporal distancing. I think about, how am I going to feel about this in the morning when I have my caffeine and my mental faculties are fully functioning? Inevitably, I always feel better about my chatter the next morning when I have all of my energy than when it's 2 a.m. and I go from an email that was maybe improperly worded and might have slightly offended someone, and somehow taking that incident to losing my job, being in jail, and dying early, right? Like that's the chain at 2 a.m. So when we're getting stuck in that thought loop, we often lose sight of the fact that these kinds of little hiccups of life happen all the time. Our emotions come, but they also fade. And simply reminding yourself of that in the moment can be really powerful for taking the volume down on our chatter and making us feel better and perform better. And so, if thinking on how you're going to feel about this in the morning isn't sufficient, lengthen the period. How am I going to feel about this next week or next month or next year? Right? Those are ways of expanding, broadening the perspective. And simple, these are like really easy things to do that take the edge off.